This lesson is going to be a quick one, and it's going to be about the page setup and as also getting it ready to print. So when we go into the document, we're able to manually set the margins, so the borders on the left and on the right. And then these are the borders where we see that our text will start writing, and then we can also move it back, so we can drag the indicator over, as well as we can take the margin and move it back to wherever the default was. And you can adjust these going under File and then going down to where we've got the page setup. And within the page setup, we've got orientation. So by default, it's portrait. You can also change it to landscape, so that's going to make it wider. There's also the paper size. So depending on the paper size that you want to print out for, the default is going to be letter, but you can also go with legal, and there's a bunch of other default paper sizes. There's the page color, so this is the background color for the page. And if you are going to be using these on a regular basis, so maybe it's landscape and it's different letter size that you commonly print to, you can set it as your default, and this will be then your default start for each one of the documents. So I'm going to change it back to portrait. And there's also the margins. So if we want it to have 2 at the top, 2 at the bottom, 2 at the left, 2 at the right, and this is within inches, and the letter size as well is within inches. So when I hit OK, what we've had is we've had an adjustment of how the page is going to look. So we're still 8 by 11, but we've got 2 inches on the left, 2 inches on the right. And then also, if we look to the left-hand side, the indicator, the measuring tool, we've got the top margin as well as the bottom margin. And so that white spot there in the middle is where we've got our regular text that we can use. So whenever you want to print, you can print a page, and this is going to give you the default options to print the page. So depending on what your print setup is, you might have some more options for that. And make sure that when you are printing, if you have set a default page, then make sure that you are using the same letter size and so on that you've set within your page setup. I'm going to set them back to the original. And if you do have to quickly make an adjustment to any of the margins, you can drag and drop the left indent as well as drag and drop the right indent as needed. So besides adjusting the margins, you can also go under Format, and there's an option called Align and Indent. So the Align will align the text to the left, it'll align it center to the right, and Justified. So Justified is the one that evenly spaces out all of the paragraphs, so the text aligns directly to the left and to the right. So it increases some of the spacing between the letters and so on to make it look nice and neat. And then we also have the indent. So we can increase the indent or decrease the indent. There's also the keyboard shortcuts, and then there's indent options. So if we want to, by default, indent on the left, and if we want to indent on the right, then we can set those indents. We can also have special indents, so only for the first line, for the hanging, and so on. And then we can specify those. So right now none is being applied, but if we're applying it to the first line, how far we want to indent it. So let's apply that as well and apply those indents. So I'm going to add in some additional text. And now I'm going to select all of that text. I'm going to apply the format. And the format is different because it's only being applied to the selected text. So if I'm increasing the indent, we see it moved over. If I'm decreasing the indent, I don't have any indent, so it's not decreasing. So it's not actually going outside of the margins. So it is slightly different. And if I do the first line, if I indent it, then we see we get this type of effect. And it's not actually going to change for the following content. So this stuff is still going to be within the same format, unless I copy and paste, and then that will paste the format over, but it still won't indent the new paragraphs that we're adding into the page. So a slight difference between the margins and the indents, and depending on what you want to do with your document, the margins are more for the page itself, whereas the indents are for the content of the page.